Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Woodward Tigers here at woodwardsports.com. I'm your host, Castillo, alongside Ms. Chris Brown, Uper, and John. You can find us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or listen to podcasts. And of course, always at woodwardsports.com. Hopefully, that is a complete thought that I finished. And that kicks off our first. We got a review over the weekend. And like I said, I don't mind reviews. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Without reviews, we don't get better as a show. If it wasn't for all the reviews, I don't think our audio would be as good as it has been. But again, I could be wrong. Somebody out there is probably going to say my audio is bad. So the review we got today was the title is called "No Complete Thoughts." It was a 1-star review. It's our first 1-star review in quite some time too. I really want to give the show a higher rating, but the host's borderline inability to speak in complete thoughts renders it nearly unlistenable. The primary host, which I can assume is me, speaks in half thoughts and pauses mid-sentence every time. This is unbearable. It is also his fake voice to imitate the average Tigers fan, or quote, the average Tigers fan is extremely stupid. This would be a problem, though, if the host did not speak in half thoughts. It's also not like there had been the first time on podcast or radio. This show has been on for multiple years, and the primary host has been even in radio. So whoever wrote this review probably remembered the fact that maybe I went on, well, I was in radio in my Grand Rapids days. I don't know. But I thought that, again, tomato, to each your own. So I'm going to retire the voice like this. Apparently, because people get so offended by it. I mean, again, two people have complained about it, but I'm just kind of, I don't know, I just kind of crack up about it. But it's just, again, complete thoughts, whatever. Whatever it is. Like I said, I'll read every review because I think we should hold ourselves accountable. But Detroit Degenerate, by the way, but wasn't that home run by Jake Rogers a thing of beauty too? I just want to talk about that home run because I know Jake Rogers felt like, and wow, they're doing a Jake the Snake Roberts on WWE Legends tonight. It's awesome.
Wait, what?
No, somebody in the YouTube chat mentioned
Oh,
he's checking in while watching any WWE Legends Jake the Snake. And it's funny you mentioned that, Dante, because I'm reading a book about wrestling right now. While
Hey,
I like, oh, here's the thing: I have always liked wrestling. I don't watch wrestling like I used to because baseball and all that, but I still like. Again, it's just a big curiosity to me. So
you're looking at one of the biggest wrestling nerds right here.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, but anyway, we're going to talk about today's game. We're going to talk about Saturday's game, and tomorrow I will be heading up to Tampa. This will be my last game for spring training, unless I can come back in March. But this will be my last game tomorrow as the Tigers take on the Yankees. That will be on television. That'll be on the Yes Network starting at 6:30. So that would be a chance for you to check out the Tigers. And the Tigers today lost 10-6. But really, it was kind of one bad inning from Chase Fry, who just looked bad. He got tagged up pretty quickly, and they couldn't just get anything over the strike zone. But Baltimore had 4 or 5 prospects. I was talking about this with Chris earlier in the game, and it was just all these guys were beasts. And yeah, I'm excited. Jed, oh holy crap, Jed's on. I don't know how often we get Jed in here, but yeah. The game will be on TV tomorrow. Let's talk about that. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about today with today's game that I really liked. And first and foremost, let's start actually with Saturday's game. But we'll start with Saturday's game. Gentlemen, the future is here. Okay, the future is here. Now you're gonna probably think to yourself, where the hell am I going with this? Well, I'll tell you. When you have a Rule 5 draft come out throwing bullets like yesterday, man, we have to take swing with a grain of salt. Yesterday, the Tigers did play the Phillies split squad, and it is good to know. I mean, there was some good signs to see, but it was, and all jokes aside, Mason Albert looked really good yesterday. 2 innings, 4 strikeouts, and he was getting a bunch of just getting some swings and misses, and throwing in there, and he looked really comfortable out there too. And what was funny was as he's going to the back because you have to go straight back through the back fence right there to get back to the dugout or to the back locker room. He forgot his pitch comm thing in his hat, so he had to bring it back. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, it was good to see. And then Parker Meadows got the home run. You got Austin Meadows there, give him the hug. So you got a really good family story right then and there. The great story about his parent, saying like his mom's like, "Oh, I'm not going to make it," but they drove down to Georgia, but it was their parents were chilling right there. And then yesterday, I think the highlight of yesterday, by the way, was seeing David Littlefield still works for the team. There's been a David Littlefield sighting, so
wow.
Yeah, that was weird. But he still works for the team. But yesterday, yeah, it was good to see the Meadows get off to a good start. And another encouraging sign too was the fact that if you're looking at the slider of Garrett Hill was disgusting. He struck out Nick Castellanos on his slider, and he also is he's been throwing a spike curve. But Chris, do you remember this at all from when he was in the minors? Or is that just a kind of a new word thing he was working on?
I don't remember a spike curve. The spike curves tend to be harder, like more in the mid 80s, kind of like an Alex Lang curve. And I remember Hill throwing more of the traditional sort of 70 mile an hour, mid 70s kind of, loopy curve. So the spike curve would be a fun development for sure.
Yeah, he had that going around. He had that going around like 81, 82, according to the radar gun on there. And I thought it looked pretty good. It was a pitch that, if again, he only allowed the one walk and one hit. But again, I thought Garrett Hill came out and he was hitting 96, 97 on the gun, which is a little more than he was last year. And so, but yeah, I thought his performance stood out. Another performance that stood out yesterday that on the pitching side of things, of course, was what I said. We mentioned Engler, but on offensive side of things, Akil Baddoo, first hit of the spring for the Tigers, got a double to right, and that was, I think, 100. Was that John? Was it 110 off the bat?
102.
102 off the bat. Okay, I thought
Meadows hit the 110 mile an hour home run.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then as far as Andy Baez swung on 3-0, got the green light from Hinch and got a single. And then probably the best moment of all day, Andre Lipsius, 2-run shot, and that was a feeling of satisfaction. Again, it's only spring, so it's with a grain of salt, but for somebody who's been on the Andre Lipsius bandwagon, captain train, all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, he'll pump 97 easily. So I know you guys, I don't know what are your guys' thoughts about yesterday's game.
Yeah. So for me, I think Engler was definitely the thing that stood out to me the most. Obviously, I wasn't there to watch the game. I kind of just have to take other people's thoughts for it. But 4 strikeouts in 2 innings, 7 swings and misses. That sounds really encouraging. I wish I was there to see it. And yeah, obviously Lipsius going deep, that was great. You can't take too much from this. As much as we want to and as excited as we are, we have to kind of realize this is going to be a process, and we're going to have to wait, have a sample size of a week or 2 weeks to how, we're really going to be able to see how these guys are going to be heading into the year. But for me, Engler was kind of my main takeaway, as well as Parker Meadows and Lipsius going deep. That was really good as well.
What about you, Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Engler was my main takeaway too, because he's a guy who has to stick on the roster, and it's just kind of a fascinating process when you talk about the Rule 5, because for years and years it seemed like teams would just take like a hard throwing reliever and hope it worked. And then a couple years ago, the Tigers took Akil Baddoo, which was who had barely played an A ball, and then this year they take Mason Engler, who had barely played in Double A. He reached Double A at the end of the year, and it's interesting because some players have skills that immediately translate no matter what level you're at. And with Baddoo, it was pitch recognition and an ability to control the strike zone. It was advanced enough that he could kind of go through all the ups and downs as a big leaguer and not get too out of sorts, despite his lack of track record in the minors. And with Englert, it's pitchability. He's a guy with 4 or 5 distinct pitches, and he throws strikes with all of them. And so who cares if he only has 100 innings under his belt? Like, that's a guy you can find a spot for. And so the fact that he was getting those swings and misses was really encouraging because, most of his stuff is just kind of average to solid average, 45 to 55 pitches on the, 20 to 80 scouting scale, I should say. And, but yeah, that he's able to mix them up and locate them is very encouraging for a guy that we think is probably going to be a long reliever, a middle reliever this year, but could eventually grow into a mid-rotation starter a year or two down the road. So that was a big takeaway. Like you said, seeing home runs from a couple of the younger prospects, not the top tier guys, Lipsius and Meadows is creeping up that way, but that was big to see. And just, we got our guy Adam Wolf was out there throwing an inning. It's always fun to see some of the, prospects who don't make any lists, but nevertheless have something to offer. It's nice to see them go out there and succeed in spring training. So that was fun.
Yeah. And it was funny too, is yesterday, Yaya Chinook, who pitched in Erie, was there. And then as I met a good old friend of the show, James Shipman, at the bar at Revival down in Lakeland. He was there. He was with a friend. So that was pretty funny to see. But what about you, Uper? What are your takeaways?
Well, it was good to see Austin Meadows back on a ball field. How that plays out this spring and into the season means a lot. I mean, his career, I'm not going to say in jeopardy, but he needs to be on the field and get back to being productive, put last year behind him in every way that he can. So that's step one, is to get back on a ball field and face pitching. So that was good to see him back out. Certainly Meadow, his brother Parker, hitting the home run. The way I kind of view him right now is we had this talk earlier this winter. We said, who needs to have a Parker Meadows year, breakout year? And my answer to that, and still is Parker Meadows needs to have another Parker Meadows year, because we saw a lot of failure in him the first few years. And last year we saw a wonderful season of baseball. He really perked up, changed some things, was the ball player everybody was hoping to see. But again, that's just 1 year. Let's see it again. To get to the majors, he's going to have to do it again. So, poking one out in a big league game in spring training is a good start. And for Englert, that's a great first step to make the ball club. He's a Rule 5 guy. They're going to want him to succeed and be worth keeping or worth sending Texas something for to complete a trade. So nothing but a good first step, but certainly, he'll be the guy to watch now the next few times out and see if he can keep it going.
And I do have the pitching in terms of who's going to be out there too, and I'll have to pull that up shortly. But no, the biggest thing that I noticed about yesterday too, among the hitters side of things, is what Chris mentioned earlier. Even Malloy, who got hit in the hand. Of course, there's no damage after that, but it was good to see them get in there right away. Phil Nevin started 0 for 3, so maybe there's just a kind of thing what they're going to have to do with just trying to see right away. Exactly. Okay. Same thing with Bañez too. Bañez is going to be playing for Cuba, and I think Tuesday and Wednesday is going to be his last, I believe Wednesday or Thursday, before he has to travel to Taiwan. I think that's where Cuba's starting off in the World Baseball Classic. But then position battle-wise, you had Jonathan Davis, who had a good game today. He had a walk, a hit, and he had a steal. And for the second straight day in a row, Jermaine Palacios had a single. He went 1 for 2 yesterday, one for 2 today, and both his RBI singles both singles were for RBIs. So to me, those kind of battles right there are going to be the ones that, because even with starting yesterday, that's where I think AJ Hinch has to make a quick decision relatively soon. And so you get the vibe in the clubhouse. So I'm going to pull up here in a second the Riley Greene. There's some interesting things he said about Riley Greene today that I want to play for everybody, and about putting him in different spots in the outfield because he wants to see what he has with everybody. And so it was interesting in a sense because he mentioned this, and he mentioned this very clearly, that the best version of the lineup is him in the top third of it. So I'm going to play it here, and here in a second once it's uploading. But another thing, yeah, I think that was interesting because everybody's assuming he's going to play center field, and he is going to play center field. But to see him get some spots in the corner, to see what else they have, I think that's why we're seeing so much time with Davis getting the outfield. Parker Meadows can play the outfield. And something that Dan Dickerson mentioned on the broadcast today, which was just interesting, the Lakeland center field is actually bigger than Comerica Park's. It doesn't look that way. And honestly, I wouldn't have known that, but here's Hinch, by the way.
In an ideal world, is Riley your leadoff hitter for the both of you?
Not necessarily. I think we'll flirt with a few different things. I'll give you two things on Riley. One, the best version of him is going to stay in that top third of the lineup somewhere. Matchup dependent, we could mess with that a little bit. So we'll see. I've got to get to know a few new hitters and how to optimize the moves that the other manager's going to make, and where am I going to hit Meadows or other guys that I could pair up with him. Secondly, he's going to be in the multi-position group as well. He's going to play one of the corners, if not both of the corners, at some time this spring, just to give ourselves a little bit of optionality. So he knows it. He's on board. I'm trying to get him as many at-bats in the spring, but I would say, our best lineup has him, in the top third.
Who else are you going to give looks in center?
We'll have Veerling play a little bit of center. Jonathan Davis will play a little bit of center. Parker will play a little bit of center, especially after your homer in your first at bat. And I'm sure there's somebody. Am I missing anybody off the top of your head?
I do.
Kryler Short. We'll see it. Probably not at the.
Yep, that was AJ Hinch talking about the whole center field position. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I think for as good as Riley Greene was in center field last year, I think most of us acknowledge that that's not his long-term position. He might play it for a few more years, but he's probably a corner outfielder in the long run. He doesn't have the ideal speed you want. Instincts are spectacular. We saw that, but I'd rather have Parker Meadows with slightly less instincts being able to run down a ball without diving so that Riley Greene can, save his spleen, which is going to explode one of these days. So it's good to just get other looks. And I think we've talked about it a bunch. Like, Hinch just likes to put guys all over the place and see what happens. So that's fine. And you don't want to go all spring with Riley Greene as your center fielder, 80% of the time, and then he gets injured again, and suddenly you don't have anybody with any recent reps planned. So it's cool to get a look at some other guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think one guy, Matt Veerling, I think he can be a guy that could profile in center field due to his speed. I just wanted to add that to Chris's point.
Yeah, and that was, Jonathan Davis is fighting for a fourth spot in the outfield, so that adds another element too. And he's showed some quickness. He's already kind of been impressive in camp already. He's one of those players that, again, is he going to be is he a household name? No, but he has come away, his work ethic, and everybody's been pretty happy with him in camp so far. And overall, that position right there for the fourth outfield spot, it's going to be a competitive one. And even at the corners too, I wouldn't mind the fact that you have Veerling now, it gives you an opportunity to have that versatility. You could put Badu. Personally, I think Badu is going to stay in left or pretty much in left field. I think talked about center. I'm not really sure if Hinch wants to put him in center, but overall, you have Badu there. On the left, you can put Greene. The combinations in the outfield are endless. It's where the infield and the third base spot of things, that's where we're going to see the most of competition here in the next few weeks too, because in the grand scheme of things, Scope is also gone at the end of the week because he's going to play for the Netherlands. So then you have Ibanez gone, you have Baez gone, and so this is a chance for, I think, let's see what else. I know Cabrera's gone, but I feel like I'm missing somebody. Is that it?
As you said, Baez, Ibanez, Cabrera, Scope.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Okay. So, yeah, from there, you're going to see a lot more Polanco or just to say the guy's name. I'm just trying to blank now all of a sudden.
Palacios.
We're going to see a lot of Palacios. We could see some Keith play at third. and more than likely too, even Brendan Davis is going to see more time in the outfield than I think at third, but you never know. He could go back to third. But he has time in the outfield, and same thing, or excuse me, in the infield, and Malloy also at third. So, but again, I think as far as making the team and all that stuff, it's way too early to get into that. And then we'll start with today's game, or we'll go into today's game. And Baltimore, by the way, I mentioned this in the top of the podcast, how many prospects they have, but they have some really good, some intriguing pitching prospects too as well. And Dean Kramer started the game for the O's. He only threw 22 pitches, but he allowed that home run to Nick Maton, who that home run was an absolute blast to watch. And it was a good home run. I was going to say something else profound, but I totally drew a blank on that. And then Spencer Torkelson 0 for 2, but that he had would have been a home run on the first swing, as first at bat. That was a serious blast. And you know what? Everybody, I think I have that too. I have that video. Lakeland's pretty good. You know what? We have the highlights, as Bernie Smilers would say. So let me find that real quick. But so Lakeland's been pretty good, and there's gonna be a food review too. I'm working on a food review because that's what they want. But I have the Spencer Torkelson at bat. I just have to. I showed it to Chris earlier.
I saw it. I can confirm
Chris saw it, so he knows what I'm talking about. So let me see if I can find it and post it in our chat. So I will do that here in just a second. But no, carry on. What were you guys' thoughts about today's game?
Yeah, so I think today's game, there was a lot more to take away. Obviously, Jake Rogers going deep. It was his first game since, I believe, July of 2021. He did go the opposite way, if I'm correct, right? It was an opposite field home run.
Yeah, oppo taco, as people like to hear.
Yeah, that's good to see. Spencer Torkelson, it was 415 foot out, I believe. Absolute blast. And one takeaway I want to take is Eduardo Rodriguez threw 2 innings. Was reading up some stats, 19 of 23 in terms of strikes. His average fastball was sitting at under 92 miles an hour, which I don't know how much of a concern that really is. I don't think you could probably read too much into that. And then you had Chase and Shreve, Ronnie Garcia, both throw scoreless innings. Those are 2 guys that are going to be vying for the bullpen this year. Obviously, we talked about Jace Fry. He had a really struggled today, 6 runs. And, Brandon White looked really good as well, 2 strikeouts on only 8 pitches. And, I think there was a lot more to take away from this game. And, it was an exciting game, 3 home runs as well. Good to see Jake Rogers back. And obviously Nick Madden and Matt Verlin going deep is a good sign as well.
It's interesting, you think back to the night of the Verlander trade and you hear the names that they got. And that was 2017. And here we are, spring of 23. And we're just now really hoping Jake Rogers is a guy to make the roster and be a part of this club going forward. It's just been quite the rocky road. So it was nice to see him on the ball field today and smack one out. And hopefully, before the injury in 21, he was starting to hit a little. So we'll see if that was real. That'd be wonderful if it was.
Yeah, I mean, above all, I think you have to feel good for Jake Rogers, right? Like that's a long rehab process, and he caught the game too, right? He was the first several innings, and occasionally Lakeland has a bit of a jet stream out to right field. I remember Roberto Campos hit a home run that way last year. Guys can get it up in the wind and hit it out there, but still, we know Jake Rogers has power, and so that had to feel awesome. And I mean, it was, the Torkelson thing kind of cracks me up. He's got to feel like the unluckiest player on earth. He hit the ball harder than anybody that game, 415 feet, to dead center. It's an out, then strikes out in his other at bat. It's like, well, this is kind of exactly what he was doing in September. But for his first contact of the year, I'll take a 415 foot out. That's a pretty good sign. Hopefully he'll just kind of aim it to the left a little bit next time. But yeah, obviously you have to be happy with Matan and Verling hitting home runs. That's a good way to make a first impression on the new organization. And then just the pitching, not so great. But it was mostly kind of just the randos that they brought in this year. Like Austin Bergner got in there as an emergency, and then sort of Lane Henderson who struggled. But then like Kervin Castro had a nice inning, right? He was up to 97, I think, with a curveball, and then yeah, John mentioned Brendan White, and they added him to the 40 man for a reason. He was sitting 95, and that slider was getting swings and misses, so that looks useful.
Yeah, Castro, I was really encouraged by Castro's outing. I really, really liked his stuff out there. Yeah, he primarily throws a curveball, but he threw the hardest ball among all the pitchers at 97. And Hinch mentioned after the game, too, that he's a guy who has a history of throwing strikes, but then when he's off, he's really off. So here is the Spencer Torkelson home run, by the way. What would have been a home run? Sorry.
The ghost home
I
run.
did not. I saw the lady that does it. I did not see the.
Mm.
I did not. I saw the lady that does it. I did not see the.
Yeah, he got hosed. He got hosed. Okay.
It looked dangerous, though.
It looked dangerous. I mean, but you see that. I mean, you saw that. You're like, come on. Yeah, he got screwed.
I mean, generally speaking, it's the first 2 days. John had a fun thing about the the spring overreactions, but very early on in spring training, the pitchers tend to be way ahead of the hitters, right? Like these guys are out here firing 97 with breaking balls. The hitters are like, come on, cut it out. So that's the first contact he makes all spring. That's outstanding to me. Like that's a very good sign. So, we'll see what happens going forward. But all you can ask is for these guys to hit the ball hard.
Mm-hmm.
And hard. It's tough to hit it harder and farther than that.
Yeah, Raj, I got to ask you about the game time. The first game, obviously, I believe was 2 hours and 15 minutes. What did it feel like? Did it feel like the game was moving faster? Like that's, I think, a huge talking point heading into this season.
First and foremost, by the way, Detroit degenerate. You're absolutely right. Ronnie Garcia looked big. I mean, he looked like, he looked a little bigger than normal. But I think it's also because maybe he's finally healthy for the first time. But
did he look ripped big, or did he look like he had a good time with pizza big?
He looked like he had a good time with pizza. He looked like
okay.
Somebody in the Discord was mentioning that, and we were all like, "Well, how can you tell from the pictures?" So apparently,
no, I can confirm because I was watching spot on. I was just like, wow, and I said it in the press box like Detroit Degenerate saw it too, so he knows what I'm talking about. No, but to answer your question, so last year going to a bunch of minor league games, we saw games that were under almost two. There's 2 games last year were under 2 hours, like an hour and 57 minutes, just under 2 hours, and it flew by yesterday. Today was not the case at all because that 5th inning was example of how bad pitching can equal. No matter what, bad pitching is always going to make a inning longer. But no, yesterday flew by pretty quick, and everybody was pretty happy with that. We saw yesterday in Boston and Atlanta where everybody made a big deal about it, but it was so what? It was just it was who cares? It was a game like, oh, the pitcher clocks are really bad. No, it's been going on in the minor leagues for a while, and
just in case nobody knows exactly what you're talking about, I assume they do, but yeah, that was a game. It was 6-6 tied in the 9th with the bases loaded, and the batter was called out for not being ready with 8 seconds to go in the plate appearance, so that ended the inning and the game, which was everybody's like, oh, my nightmare. But this is why they have spring training, right? This is get this stupid stuff out of the way now, and it won't be a problem down the road. It also wouldn't shock me if we see that the pitch clock enforcement get a lot more lax later in the season, and particularly in the playoffs. I don't think we have to worry about this sort of thing.
See, that to me, that's the slippery slope that they need to avoid. It can't. Once it's in, they need to stick with it, because if they do allow it to wither as the season goes on and it disappears in the playoffs, next season, it goes away basically. It's always going to be harder to pull it back to more enforcement if they really want this and they think it's working. They need to stick with the enforcement. I heard a lot of people yesterday, at least I don't know, a few people say you have to not do it in the ninth inning. Just do away with the pitch clock in the ninth inning. That's nuts. That's just right. I mean, I'm always willing to listen to someone's point of view, and I guess I still would. But if they enforce the rule on a violation in the bottom of the eighth, and a bases loaded rally goes down the drain, and now you're not going to call it 10 minutes later in the ninth, you got to be kidding me. Okay, the game has already been altered by the rule, and whether you like the rule or you don't like the rule, here's what I can guarantee you. People hate when a game ends on a balk too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You hear everything. Oh, you should never call it. And that's that, that was a ticky-tack balk, blah, blah, blah. That was a balk. And here, the guy wasn't in the box. He knows the rule. You got to apply it. You can't pick and choose when, in my opinion. You have to stick with it. Same thing with the baseline runner's lane interference in the World Series when that happened a few years ago. Oh, you can't call that in the World Series. Well, yeah, you can. It's a rule, And I think that once they put this rule in place, boy, I really think they have to bear down and stick with it and not let it wither as the season goes on.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. But as like a younger viewer, baseball is trying to get more younger viewers, and I just think this is good for the game, to keep the game faster, to get more action on the field, and to speed things up. Because as you know, people just don't have the attention span that they used to, and I think it's really important, and I think that should be on the top of their list in terms of making the game better, is to making the games faster and more entertaining for the fan.
But see, to me, I kind of disagree with that, John, because I feel that this is just a knee-jerk reaction. Because football game, no one complains how long a football game goes, but somehow baseball has been hyper focused. Well, yeah, I mean, I do too. But yeah, I think baseball has an image problem based off the fact that a lot of this stuff it could have been simply Rob Manfred asked his nephew. His nephew's like, it's too long. Wow, I understand appealing to a younger audience, but I really think already, if you look at some of the numbers across the board, yes, the average viewer is up in age, but I thought that the pitch clock in the minor leagues worked out fine. I think it's just making it faster, but as far as there's no explanation for the bases. I don't understand that at all. That one I don't get, but
the size of the bases.
The size of the bases. Now they still look like pizza boxes.
Weren't they saying that like the impetus behind that was kind of player safety? They were hoping they'd get fewer like ankle on ankle plays at first base, and then if you're going to change one, you might as well change them all. And then like, hey, maybe these extra inches will get us a couple more stolen bases. Yesterday's game was 2 hours and 15 minutes, which I looked up, and it was the shortest game of the day. It was also, the Tigers had 3 games last year that were 215 or less out of 162, so it was like, wow, that's a big difference. Today was 246, which is significantly longer. But then when you consider there were 20 runs scored, there were 19 hits, there were multiple mid-inning pitching changes, and I looked that up. The Tigers' 37 games last year were 246 or less. So this was still much faster than an average Tigers game last year. Part of that, I think, has to do with no TV, right? No TV commercials.
Yep.
Bogging it down. I don't know if there's a standard time, between innings. I'm sure there is, but they don't always stick to it. But yeah, the games are gonna be faster all year long, and I'm into that. I do like a good long baseball game too, but if you can get the average baseball game down 20, 30 minutes, I think that's going to be a good thing for the sport in general.
And I think the thing about the playoffs that I forgot to mention earlier too, one thing I have really railed on and hated over the last decade is how many 4-hour 9-inning baseball games there are in the playoffs. I mean, they are getting to be interminable. Now, I know the commercial breaks are a little longer. Okay, so that part is baked in, and that's fine. But otherwise, playoff baseball is really, really dragging. I mean, you could spend an hour and be in the second inning. I mean, that's all the time. So it would be good to me if they do stick with it right through the playoffs.
Mhm. In terms of like other solutions that you guys have other than the pitch clock, is there any other kind of ideas you have to make the game move by a little quicker, or is this kind of their best case, their best bet?
I think this is fine. I don't think it's for appealing for a younger audience. I just think it's to make the game a little faster. But I think this is fine. I mean, I think if you make too many changes at once, you have to kind of, if they want to make some other changes, they have to kind of wait and see what they're going to have first. I mean, a lot of this stuff was based off what they did in the Atlantic League last year and with the minor league. So you're going to have to get a new crop of players before you make another rules like this change again. So the robot umps are coming, and that the automated strike zone, that's going to cause some more controversy. That's going to change framing forever for catchers. But for now, this is fine.
Have you guys noticed? Is that home plate umpire looking down to the third base ump a lot when they're making these calls on these violations?
Yeah,
I haven't seen enough to know.
That's what I'm wondering, and I haven't looked into it. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. I'm wondering if it's the third base umpire who's really monitoring that clock, because let's face it, the third base ump doesn't do a hell of a lot.
Well, based off, well, you know what, Uper makes sense because the clock at in Joker Market Stadium or wherever the Publix Field is, the proper name of it. It's where the Polk University sign is. The clock is right there. It's hard to see from the press box because the numbers are in red and you got the sun right there. But from third base, it's a clear, you can see it right there. And that's probably the reason why I did notice that a little bit, that they were looking down at third base, but it makes sense because third base, they have a clear view of the clock right there. And then that noise you may have heard the noise in the booth when it was like that beep. That's when the pitcher is, they start the clock, and that beep is when the pitcher's making his motion. So
it's going to be, that part fascinates me as an amateur umpire who will never have to deal with any of this. But still, the third base umpire, let's face it, they have fair follow responsibility past third base, and they have check swing responsibility on left-hand batters. And otherwise, they might get one or two calls a game. So they would definitely, to me, be the guy out there who should be more often than not having time on his hands to monitor that, because that's a lot of new responsibility. Let's face it, that you're lumping onto the umpires with all these rules.
No, you're right. Todd had an interesting question. Was there not talk about being able to try to steal first base from home or a pass ball or a wild pitch?
I think that was the Savannah Bananas that were doing that. I don't know if that was that in
No.
the Atlantic League too?
Yes, the Atlantic League had that for at least 1 year. And it was any time in the count, if the pitch went to the backstop, you could take off for first.
Yeah,
I wonder how that worked out.
I'm not sure how it worked out, but it sounds fun.
Yeah, overall, though, I think today was a good day for the Tigers, even despite the score, because of the contributions already from Verling and Atan. And here's the thing, too. It was a stat that Matt Eddy from Baseball America pointed out that I thought was pretty interesting, because we got a chance to talk to Winslow Perez, who made his first appearance in the clubhouse, and he's rehabbing a back. And the reason why I mention that, because it's kind of usually this will probably be my inside of the number, but we're not doing our segments as of yet. We'll start doing those on Thursday. But one of the things that came out about Winslow Perez was last year he was among the top in terms of top half. Let me see if I can find the stat real quick here. 10 minor leaguers. This is from Matt Eddy from Baseball America. 10 minor leaguers were at least 50% better than the league average in a park adjusted OPS plus and ISO plus. The filters being 22 under 350 plate appearances, and Winslow Perez comes on there. And Matt Eddy pointed out something that was interesting. And as far as like the Tigers, in terms of a minor league system, had the lowest runs produced at 4.7, which then matches what the major league levels team was doing. So again, maybe that's why some of the apathy comes from some of the Tigers and what have you. But again, the overreaction, as John put it nicely, or put it out there pretty well, it's worth getting excited about because it's nice. It's this is a team that still has. I saw there's some quick at bats out there from Davis and Scope, but still.
I think the most interesting thing about that tweet from Matt Eddy was the other 9 players on the list, right? Or however many players. They're all guys who are top 100 prospects on multiple lists. Kyle Manzardo, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Ellie De La Cruz, Indy Rodriguez, Addison Barger, Logan O'Hoppe, Austin Wells, Edgar Cuero, and Pete Crow Armstrong. These are all top 100 prospects, and then there's Winsel Perez. So, yeah, I mean, I think I put out a series of tweets last year about like comparing Winsel Perez and Parker Meadows to some guys and looking at all their actual statistical production. And his point was that, yeah, the Tigers just play in a bunch of really bad parks for offense. And so it's sometimes it's hard to use traditional stats to see how well they're doing, which goes to, I was mentioning it in the Discord earlier, a guy that Raj is a little bit higher on than I am, but he likes to point this out, is Manuel Sequeira hit 19 home runs last year in the Florida State League as a 19-year-old, which is really rare. And he hit 12 of them in Lakeland, which is a very hard place to hit home runs. Ask Spencer Torkelson. So I mean, that's something to think about there. I mean, there are other aspects of his game, but it's pretty impressive when you see guys put up that sort of power in Lakeland or West Michigan.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of. I mean, as far as high A and low A last year, there's not a lot of guys that had really. I don't think anybody hit 20 home runs, right, Chris? I don't think in high A or low A, outside of Sequeira, I think led them all.
Nobody who stayed there all year. I think Meadows hit 20 on the year, but in like 3 or 4 were in high A, but then the rest were in Erie. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in like even in the last several years, I'm trying to think. I think Ray Rivera hit 20 plus one year in West Michigan, but that's all he had, and he's no longer playing baseball. So, yeah, Winsel Perez really put up good stats. I think that's the case. That some people have talked about. I don't know if it was Cameron was talking about him being kind of his sleeper on our minor league report podcast had he not been hurt. And yeah, I think that's a reasonable take because he was putting up really good offensive stats last year.
And he talked about the swing too. One of the things he talked about yesterday was the fact that he was working on putting more loft in the swing, and that was a big part of it. And he made an adjustment where he was talking about put his hands back a little more so he could come through the zone quicker, and that's what is a result of that. And that kind of, I remember when he first came here, he was doing pretty well, but then he started really hitting inconsistently. And I gotta give credit to Dan Hasty, who said when he's on, he is one of the best hitters in the system. And I thought that, I mean, no offense to Hasty, I thought Hasty was saying as lip service, but the adjustments the Tigers identified were, again, and here's another example of what we're talking about. The Tigers identified the changes. They work with them to get better.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you got to give Perez credit though, because adding loft to your swing is not that easy. We've seen a lot of guys who just can't do it, and he did it with no noticeable change in his plate discipline, which is a huge bonus there. So, yeah, I don't know. We talked about it with the developments getting better, and that was a good one. I'd like to see some more of that this year. Let's see them get Campos some loft. Let's see them help Daniel Cabrera figure out how to hit. Let's see some of that this year. But no, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad you got to talk to him because it's kind of a bummer to see his name back on the injured list. We were really hoping that he had a long time off. Really hoping that the back wouldn't flare up, and so you got to get a little bit worried about that. But I'm glad you at least got to talk to him.
Yeah, and in terms of like an ETA, is he a guy you could potentially see in September, do you guys think, this year? Or maybe earlier than that?
Well, he's on the 40-man, right?
Yeah, he's on the 40-man, yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, Rod, you actually asked Hinch about him. I don't know if that was off the record or what, but...
yeah, that was on the record. He was pretty excited about him and through the developments he made, last season, and he was but again, as far as playing second base and all that is concerned, they're going to try to give him some time. That's where they ideally going to see him there. But no, they were really Hinch was really high on him, and for mention him, and again, Lipsius came up in the conversation yesterday before the game. So, but for now, Perez is, I think what he's going to do now is just continue to rest and rehab, but he hasn't participated in the drills as of yet. Same thing with, although Reese Olson did throw some side bullpen today, so I did see that on the sheet. So,
yeah, he was dealing with some elbow discomfort, right? Which is never a great combo of words to hear for a pitcher. But they say they're ramping him up, so that's good.
Dakota in her chat asked if we will sign anyone else. I still think there's a possibility they will. I mean, based off the kind of the conversation, I'm not gonna. That's purely speculation kind of thing. But I think they're gonna see what they have in camp first before they decide to go elsewhere. And again, this is where you have to look at who else is going to drop who and what have you. But I wouldn't be surprised if they make another move or two. I mean, they were pretty. They signed like a bunch of lefty relievers in a span of like 3 weeks over the last 3 weeks. And they're pretty quick on making decisions about that. So if somebody fits, great. If they don't, they're out. So Brisky will be tomorrow. Yes, Bo Brisky will be pitching tomorrow for Tigers. As far as the trade deadline is concerned, we'll see. Again, this is way too early to tell, but I do get the impression that they're not going to be afraid to make any moves. So,
yeah, I'd be shocked if they don't do something at the trade deadline. Most likely selling, but who I couldn't tell you right now.
Will Smith. Will Smith's still out there, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple people still out there. We mentioned Profar several times. It just, to me, it's other than the lefty reliever, I could see the Tigers have no shortage of bodies at this point, right? They've got lots of candidates for lots of different positions, and we know they're not actively trying to compete. I mean, they'll say that they want to, right? But they're not like, hey, we need to get 2 extra wins right now. So I don't think they're going to sign somebody just to sign somebody, right? So, but I could see them looking at the team and going, we need another lefty reliever, because that is kind of you've got Alexander, and then what? So,
I mean, Shreve looked pretty good today. He had a splitter. We were trying to determine in the press box whether it was a splitter or a slider, but I think on StatCast they had it as a slider, but it looked like a splitter. So that'll be interesting to see if he can make that into the thing. But we still have, I haven't seen yet too, and I think probably might see him in the next couple of days is Miguel Depozo, and see what they have with him. I mean, again, I don't know what's going to be that. And same thing with Joey Wentz. I think we'll be pitching. I think he'll be pitching the next couple of days. I did see it on the sheet that he'll be traveling. I think he's going to travel with the team tomorrow, or I think he's pitching Tuesday. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Raj, did you see DeJesus pitch?
Yes, I did see him pitch in the 9th. Yes, or the pitch in the 9th yesterday.
Do you look good?
I mean, he looked all right. Again,
you looked like him.
Yeah, it looked like it's just because again, it was Philly's split squad, so it's kind of. I would like to see him against the regulars before I can make any kind of conclusion. But it was painful to see though. Chase Fry, no command in the strike zone. It was just everything he left open. It was just he was getting hammered. And Baltimore, I think at that point had a couple of their younger prospects in there. But I don't know. Today was a good day, and the Tigers hopefully tomorrow continue to build off that progress. Again, wins and losses don't matter. It's the little things like progress from seeing what we're seeing. And again, the biggest takeaway today, we mentioned, is Spencer Wilson's big home run, or
big home run, pseudo home run, something.
There was one inning from hell, right? Like it was kind of I watched the Red Wings last night, and the Red Wings absolutely dominated the Tampa Bay Lightning the entire game and lost 3-0 because Tampa has an amazing goalie, and the Red Wings had some bad luck. The Tigers played 8 pretty good innings. One of them was a disaster, but it's spring training, and the guys who were pitching in that inning probably won't be pitching for the Tigers at all this year. So wins and losses, like you said, don't matter. And there were a lot of little things to, at least be optimistic about.
So now the flip side of that game, and Roger alluded to it earlier, if you're a Baltimore Orioles fan, how good you feeling?
Oh man,
You got a little pop in your step, don't you? I mean, thinking
yeah.
what's coming down the road here.
They've scored 10 runs in the first 2 games.
Yeah.
You got Taron Vavra, who made a couple nice plays on Riley Greene, guy I wanted the Tigers to draft in 2020, by the way.
Yes.
And then you've got, they had Kobe Mayo out there. They had Connor Norby. You saw Jackson Holiday today. Cade Povich was pitching. Another guy, they got Povich and another guy who pitched today from the Twins in the Jorge Lopez trade. I'm trying to think, was Colton Cowser was there?
Yeah.
All like they got
Hersey was playing. Hersey was playing right field. I think at the end of the game, but Povich, by the minute, he looked really good. I mean, he was out there throwing darts. I thought he, among all the Baltimore relievers, stood out. He was good, and 97 with some movement on it. So yeah, Baltimore is going to be a fun team to watch this year. If they can continue, if they can get contributions from the young guys, I think they're going to be an interesting watch this year. But prospect wise, I think isn't Baltimore one of the top prospects team, or what they voted number 1 system recently?
I think I would say they're definitely a top 10 system, because I think Gunnar Henderson still counts as a prospect.
Yes,
he's either number 1 or number 2 prospect in baseball. Their pitching isn't quite as impressive as their hitting, but they do have a couple really nice arms led by Grayson Rodriguez. But yeah, the other funny thing about today's roster was it was all those prospects and then a bunch of former Tigers, which I assume that teams do this on purpose, right? So you had James McCann there. There was Daz Cameron. There was Josh Lester. We saw Reed Garrett, former Rule 5 pick, and then Kyle Dowdy, who never pitched for the Tigers but was in their system. It was like, wow, man, look at all these names from the past.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was especially when Lester he subbed up for somebody, and then Daz Cameron was on with 2 runners on, or I think it was like 2 runners on, and the way the inning was going, I thought something bad was going to happen, but then he promptly struck out. Mm-hmm. So it was, I guess it was a 4A player on display today. Just, I'm not trying to sound crass, but I mean, I totally forgot that Reed Garrett was a Rule 5 draft pick until it was mentioned.
Yeah,
but
it's been about 2 months for the Tigers, I think.
Do you guys Moose?
I don't know.
Mike Moustakas.
Oh, Moustakas.
He might be cooked.
He is cooked. Yes, he is.
He's still out there. Yeah, he might. Yeah, if he was. Yeah, I forgot about his nickname being the Moose. No, I think if the team wanted to sign him, they would have signed him by now. So, but other than that, we'll be back on Thursday for the normal Thursday. So we're going to start doing 2 shows a week. So Thursdays and Sundays. So that way you can get all the weekend action and during the week. So this will be throughout the regular season. And yes, we'll be out at opening day somewhere. I don't know yet. I don't know what the exact plans are, but I know Woodward Sports is going to be out at opening day. I think at the same place we were last year. Well, whether we'll be doing a live show or not, I don't know. I would like to. That'd be awesome. But yeah, expect us out at opening day, and I'll be out there the whole season covering every game down at Comerica Park. There'll be a few away games I'm going to think about going to. Probably Cleveland, Chicago. I do want to go to a game in Milwaukee because I want to see a game. I've always wanted to go check out a game in Milwaukee. So we shall see if that happens. But the Colorado, the Tigers playing Colorado, and I have my brother-in-law's brother lives out there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, if you want to come and crash here, it's crazy. You can stay here." And he lives like 5 minutes away from the park. I'm like, bet.
Dude, that's the number 1 place I want to visit is Colorado. Can't wait to go there.
Yeah, I'm just worried about the high altitude and everything, so my sinuses and all that, because I'm old.
I'm 10 hours from Denver. If you need a place to stay on the way, we're ready to go.
Well, yeah, I've been to Denver several times. It's a good time out there, and we just had some friends from Colorado come out and visit, and he was talking about how Rockies fans are kind of like Cubs fans. They show up no matter what, and they just kind of party, and they don't particularly care that much about the team sucking, which, hey, I mean, that's good, I guess, but yeah, it's a beautiful setting out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, And before we get out, I just wanted to mention we did hit 800 subscribers on YouTube. That was our goal by the end of February, and our goal, I believe, by opening day is 1,000, Raj. So,
Yeah.
We're getting there, 800. So thank you all for subscribing and watching our videos. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And please subscribe to this, and please subscribe to Tiger Mining Report. The Tiger Mining Report is at 841, and I want to get to 1,000 in the worst way possible on Tiger Mining Report. So please subscribe to both our channels. Takes 2 seconds. Get content. What were you say, Chris?
I was going to say both channels.
Yeah.
Both our channels. Both our channels. That is.
I keep getting emails from Bank of America, and it says B of A, and I'm like, why is Bofa? Does Bofa keep emailing me, man? But,
so Bofa, yeah, Bofa. So that would be great. Please, please subscribe to both of our channels. And as far as the last question about Moustakas to a minor league deal, the Tigers have a bunch of players they have to sort through. I don't think Moustakas is not going to sign for a minor league deal unless it's for the Dodgers, that seems to happen. Like that happened with Matt Carpenter when he signed with the Yankees, and then we saw it happen parlayed into a contract with the Padres. So
I suppose almost any left-hand batter is going to say, well, now that the shift is gone, I can hit. So maybe he'll say that.
Yeah. And that was a good mention because Carpenter seemed like he was done and came back and had some, was very productive. So you never want to completely write anybody off. But again, the Tigers are not really trying to win. I think that's they will, of course, never say that. But if they think that there's somebody who's going to help them win this year and not in the future, then they're not going to sign them. They want people who can help them in the future more than they can help them this year.
Yeah, great depth. So for myself, Chris, Uper, and John, we'll see you Thursday. Have a good week, everybody.